I stood in the bustling newsroom of the Chicago Tribune, watching my best friend and colleague Emma present my investigative pitch on local election corruption, as if it were hers. The editor clapped her on the back, praising her insight, while my stomach twisted into knots of betrayal. That night, alone in my apartment, the pain hit like a freight train. 5 years of shared secrets and late-night brainstorming shattered in one opportunistic grab, leaving me seething with a quiet vow. This ends now. The next morning, I dragged myself to the office, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as I settled at my desk. Emma approached soon after, her tone overly casual as she mentioned how the pitch had landed well, and suggested we collaborate more closely on follow-ups. She implied my recent stress might have made me forget details, but the words landed like subtle accusations, stirring doubt among nearby reporters who glanced my way. I nodded politely, but inside confusion gnawed at me. Had she always been this evasive, or was I just now seeing the cracks? By afternoon, the unease deepened during the team huddle. Colleagues whispered about upcoming assignments, and when the editor assigned the lead to Emma, he cited her fresh perspective without mentioning my original notes. She caught my eye and shrugged, later pulling me aside to claim it was all a team effort, downplaying any ownership on her part. The dismissal fueled a growing anger, not explosive but simmering, as I replayed our college days when we'd vowed to lift each other up in this cutthroat industry. Now her indirect barbs made me question every late-night call, every shared deadline. Had loyalty been one-sided all along? That evening, as I reviewed my files, small inconsistencies emerged. Emails I'd sent her with story outlines now echoed in her drafts, subtly altered to erase my input. The betrayal stung sharper, mixing with bewilderment. Why undermine me when we were both climbing the same ladder? Sleepless hours followed, my mind racing through scenarios, the hurt evolving into cold frustration. I couldn't confront her yet. That would play into her narrative of me being overly emotional. Instead, resolve hardened. I needed proof, something concrete to reclaim what was mine without descending into chaos. The following day brought more tension. During lunch, Emma joined our group table, steering conversation toward her breakthrough, while glossing over how it started. Others congratulated her, their enthusiasm isolating me further, and she later texted that I seemed distant, implying my reaction was jealousy. The message ignited fury. I'd poured months into that research, sacrificing weekends, only for her to steal the credit. Doubt crept in about our friendship's foundation, built on what I now saw as convenience for her ambition. As the week wore on, the office atmosphere thickened with unspoken conflicts. Assignments shifted subtly in her favor, my pitches sidelined with vague feedback that echoed her influence. She mentioned in passing how the editor valued reliability, a not-so-veiled dig at my supposed unreliability. Each instance amplified the inner turmoil. Pain from the personal loss clashing with rage at the professional sabotage. I felt unmoored, like the ground I'd stood on for years was eroding beneath me. By Friday, the pressure peaked during a one-on-one with our supervisor. He praised Emma's initiative and suggested I learn from her approach, unaware of the origins. She had already planted seeds, framing me as the supportive sidekick rather than the originator. Walking out, my chest tightened with a mix of humiliation and determination. This wasn't just about one story. It threatened my entire career in a city where breaking stories meant survival. That night, staring at my laptop screen filled with evidence of her appropriations, the transformation began. The initial shock gave way to calculated clarity. I wouldn't lash out. That would destroy my credibility. Hiring a discreet investigator felt like the only path forward, a way to expose the truth without direct confrontation. Anger fueled the decision, but beneath it lay a steely resolve. From victim of deception to architect of justice, one careful step at a time. The investigator's first report arrived early the next week, outlining preliminary checks into her communications. It revealed patterns of her forwarding my ideas to superiors with minimal credit, building her portfolio on my groundwork. The findings hit hard, confirming the betrayal's depth and intensifying the emotional storm. Disorientation from realizing how long she'd manipulated our bond, fury at the audacity. Yet with each page, control returned. I was no longer reacting blindly but planning methodically. Office interactions grew strained as rumors circulated about a big promotion on the horizon, one she'd positioned herself for through these tactics. She confided in me over coffee, expressing excitement while subtly reminding me of our shared history, as if to guilt me into silence. The hypocrisy boiled my blood, but I kept responses neutral, channeling the rage into focus. The conflict escalated internally, every glance from her now laced with suspicion on my end. As days blurred, the narrative in my head shifted dramatically. What started as personal hurt expanded into a professional reckoning. Her actions not only undermined me but eroded trust across the team. Sleepless nights turned productive. I documented everything, preparing for the moment truth would surface. The bewilderment faded, replaced by a chilling certainty. This betrayal would be her undoing, not through vengeance, but through irrefutable facts. By midweek, the investigator uncovered more. Deleted emails showing her deliberate omissions of my contributions. The evidence mounted, mirroring the rising tension in my resolve. Pain lingered, a dull ache from lost friendship, but anger sharpened into purpose. I envisioned the exposure, not a scene, but a quiet revelation that forced accountability. From shattered trust to empowered action. The journey felt inevitable now, each revelation stripping away victimhood. The office buzzed with anticipation for the quarterly review, where credits would be finalized. Emma's confidence grew, her indirect boasts to colleagues grating against my silence. She assumed compliance, but I was steps ahead, the investigator's work nearing completion. The emotional layers peeled back. Initial confusion now crystallized into defiant strength, ready to reclaim my voice without raising it. As the review loomed, inner conflict reached its zenith. Doubt whispered that confrontation might backfire, but the weight of evidence silenced it. Betrayal's sting motivated rather than paralyzed, transforming raw emotion into strategic poise. I was no longer the overlooked partner. I was the one holding the cards, poised for the shift that would redefine everything. The investigator's office sat in a nondescript building downtown, and I arrived early that Monday, my pulse quickening as Thomas slid a thick folder across the desk. He outlined the findings methodically. Over the past 6 months, Emma had forwarded at least 7 of my story outlines to the editor, each time rephrasing them slightly to claim sole credit, while deleting my original emails from shared drives. The evidence included timestamps, metadata from her laptop, and witness statements from 2 junior reporters who'd seen her alter documents during late shifts. Shock rooted me to the chair, not a scream or outburst, but a deep internal fracture, as if the ground had vanished beneath me, leaving only freefall. He continued, revealing how she'd spread rumors through subtle channels. Anonymous tips to HR about my supposed unreliability, framing missed deadlines as incompetence when they stemmed from her delays. One file detailed her conversations with the editor, where she implied I struggled with sources, positioning herself as the reliable alternative. The betrayal's scope hit like repeated blows. Personal confidences twisted into professional weapons, our friendship a facade for her ascent. Disorientation swirled. How had I missed the signs? The way she'd probe for my ideas during coffee breaks only to repurpose them? Tears pricked my eyes, not from weakness, but from the raw ache of realizing trust had been a one-way street. Thomas paused, then added the deeper layer. Her actions extended beyond theft. Audits of agency records showed discrepancies in her reporting. Fabricated interviews with election officials to bolster her pitches, including one where she quoted a non-existent source to secure a byline. The investigator had cross-checked public databases, confirming the lies, and traced payments from external PR firms that benefited from her skewed coverage. Fury ignited slowly, a cold burn in my chest, as the pieces connected. This wasn't mere opportunism. It undermined the agency's integrity and my standing in a field where credibility was everything. Silent resolve settled in. No dramatic confrontation, just a calculated path to expose the truth. By midday back at my desk, I pored over the documents alone, the office hum fading into white noise. Each page amplified the emotional storm. Bewilderment at her duplicity clashing with anger at the humiliation she'd inflicted, sidelining my work while climbing on it. She'd texted earlier, suggesting we grab lunch to clear the air, implying my distance stemmed from insecurity, but I ignored it, the indirect plea only fueling my determination. The transformation accelerated, from stunned victim to someone grasping the reins. Evidence in hand transforming pain into power. That afternoon, the investigator called with an update. He'd interviewed a former colleague who'd quit over similar tactics, providing affidavits that corroborated the pattern. Emma had targeted others before me, quietly eroding their contributions to build her resume. The revelation deepened the wound. Our bond, forged in journalism school struggles, had masked a predator's strategy. Rage simmered, not hot and reckless, but icy and focused, pushing me to organize the files into an airtight dossier. No more second-guessing. This demanded action, subtle and unassailable. As evening fell, I met Thomas again for clarifications, his questions probing the timeline of our collaboration. He confirmed the risks. Going public could invite backlash, but the evidence was solid enough for internal review or even legal escalation if needed. Internally, conflict raged. The hurt of lost friendship warred with vindication's pull. Yet resolve won out. I'd present this not as revenge, but as safeguarding the truth, letting facts dismantle her facade. The shock ebbed, replaced by a steely clarity. Betrayal had broken something, but it forged something stronger in its place. The next morning, news of an upcoming award nomination circulated. One Emma was favored for, based on her investigative series. Colleagues congratulated her in passing, unaware of the origins, and she acknowledged them modestly, later pulling me aside to share the excitement indirectly, as if including me solidified her narrative. The irony twisted the knife, intensifying the inner turmoil. Confusion over how far she'd go, fury at the gall. But with the dossier complete, control shifted. I was no longer reacting to her moves but anticipating the fallout. By week's end, the investigator wrapped up, handing over digital backups and advising discretion. The full scope crystallized. Her scheme had jeopardized not just my career, but the trust of sources and readers alike. Emotional layers peeled away. Initial disarray giving way to purposeful anger, then to quiet strength. I wouldn't broadcast the discovery. Instead, I'd channel it into the next phase, where justice emerged from shadows, not spotlights. The revelation marked the turning point. From deceived partner to empowered truth seeker, ready to act. With the dossier in hand, I spent the next evening mapping out the response, not for destruction but for accountability, compiling every piece of evidence into a single, irrefutable package that could go straight to the editor without my name attached. The process sharpened my focus. Cross-reference timestamps from stolen emails, pair them with metadata logs, and include affidavits from the witnesses Thomas had lined up. Tension built with each edition, as I weighed the risks. Backlash from HR if traced back, or Emma's counteraccusations painting me as vindictive. But the cold clarity overrode doubt, transforming lingering hurt into precise strategy. This wasn't about personal score settling. It was about restoring balance in a system that rewarded deceit. The following morning, I reached out to a trusted junior reporter, Mike, who'd once confided his own frustrations with credit grabs in the newsroom. Over a quick call, he agreed to act as the anonymous conduit, implying he'd stumbled on the files during a routine archive dive, which added a layer of plausibility without implicating me. His indirect confirmation eased some pressure, but internally, conflict surged. The pain of Emma's betrayal still throbbed, mixing with anger at how her lies had tainted team dynamics, yet planning channeled it into purpose. I outlined the handoff, slipped the dossier into the editor's inbox during the afternoon rush, timed just before the weekly briefing where assignments solidified. Each step heightened the stakes, my resolve hardening from reactive shock to proactive control. By noon, I reviewed the package one last time, adding a cover note that highlighted the fabricated sources without emotional language, letting facts speak. The investigator had warned of potential fallout. Emma might spin it as a smear, rallying allies, but the evidence's weight, digital trails, witness accounts, made denial futile. Bewilderment from the revelation faded, replaced by a steely determination. I'd observed her patterns for months now, her subtle manipulations in meetings, and this plan mirrored that precision back at her. No outbursts or direct involvement, just a mirror held up to her actions, forcing consequences she couldn't dodge. Afternoon brought the first test. Emma stopped by my desk, mentioning the upcoming briefing and suggesting we align on story angles, her words carrying an undercurrent of assumption that I'd stay sidelined. I responded neutrally, buying time, but the encounter ignited fresh fury. How casually she operated, oblivious to the net closing. Back home, I simulated the delivery, practicing the sequence. Mike receives the signal, drops the files, and I monitor from afar via office chatter. The emotional shift deepened. Initial disorientation evolved into empowered foresight, anger fueling not recklessness but meticulous care. This preparation stripped away victimhood, revealing a path where justice emerged organically from truth. As evening approached, I encrypted the digital copy for Mike, ensuring traceability led nowhere near me. Thomas followed up with final advice. Keep records of the handoff for protection, in case escalation hit legal territory. The guidance amplified tension. Her fraud could trigger audits beyond the agency, exposing wider issues, but it solidified my grip. Rage at her audacity, once paralyzing, now drove efficiency. I'd turn her weaponized trust into her downfall, without a single raised voice. The plan's elegance lay in its restraint. No confrontation, just revelation that demanded reckoning. Night fell with the briefing looming the next day, and I lay awake refining contingencies. What if she preempted with more rumors? Counter with silence, let evidence dismantle her. The internal transformation peaked. From betrayed confidant grappling with confusion, to architect of subtle equity, where every detail served the greater aim. Pain lingered as a quiet undercurrent, but resolve dominated, cold and unyielding, ready to execute. This wasn't vengeance. It was reclamation, positioning me to emerge not broken, but unbreakable. The morning of the handoff, Mike confirmed receipt via text, his message brief and coded to avoid trails. Office energy buzzed with pre-briefing prep, and as I filed routine reports, anticipation coiled tight. Emma's confidence in the meeting room would soon crack under incoming scrutiny. She'd implied to colleagues that the award nod was hers alone. But the dossier would rewrite that narrative. Emotional layers aligned. Bewilderment transmuted into strategic poise, anger into measured force. I positioned myself peripherally, close enough to observe fallout without drawing fire. Mid-morning, the drop happened seamlessly. Mike later signaled success, the package now in play. Waiting amplified every second. What if the editor dismissed it? But the fact's solidity quelled panic, my planning paying off and maintained composure. From the revelation's shock, I'd forged this moment, stepping fully into control. The tension crested, not as chaos, but as the calm before inevitable shift, where betrayal's architect faced her own design. The briefing room filled with the usual pre-meeting chatter as I took my seat in the back, the air thick with anticipation for the quarterly assignments. Mike had confirmed the dossier's delivery an hour earlier, slipped into the editor's stack during the morning rush, and now every glance toward the front table carried weight. Emma positioned confidently near the head, outlining her next independent project to nearby colleagues. She implied the award nomination was a natural progression of her hard work, drawing nods from the team. But the indirect boasts only tightened the knot in my stomach, a mix of lingering pain from her betrayal and the sharp edge of impending justice. Tension mounted as the editor entered, flipping through papers, his expression shifting from routine to furrowed focus upon reaching the anonymous package. He cleared his throat midway through the agenda, announcing an urgent review of recent submissions without specifying details, then called Emma forward for her segment. She proceeded smoothly at first, detailing fabricated sources for her election series, but the editor interrupted after a minute, referencing discrepancies in the attached evidence. Timestamps showing altered emails, witness notes on deleted originals. Her response faltered, attempting to dismiss it as a clerical error, but he pressed, citing the metadata logs that linked her drafts directly to my files. The room stilled, colleagues exchanging uneasy looks as the implications sank in. No shouting erupted, just a growing murmur that isolated her position. Fury from the revelation surged within me, not as hot rage but a cold satisfaction watching her narrative crumble under facts she'd overlooked. The editor excused the group temporarily, pulling her into a side office for a closed discussion, where voices leaked through the door, her defenses rising in pitch, implying sabotage from a disgruntled peer, but countered by the dossier's airtight proofs. Minutes stretched into an hour, the team dispersed to desks but buzzing with speculation. One reporter mentioned overhearing references to HR involvement, another noted the editor's calls to legal. I stayed peripheral, filing notes to maintain normalcy, but internally the transformation peaked. From the bewildered friend of weeks ago to the silent force steering consequences. The pain of humiliation yielding to a profound respect for the plan's precision. Emma emerged pale and directed to pack her workspace, the editor announcing her suspension pending full audit, framing it as protocol for integrity checks. Word spread rapidly through the newsroom. HR arrived by noon, reviewing the same evidence with her in a conference call, where she attempted to downplay the fabrications as oversights, but the affidavits from past colleagues sealed the escalation. The agency initiated an internal probe, cross-verifying every byline she'd claimed, uncovering similar patterns in 3 prior stories, stolen angles from juniors, skewed quotes that favored paying interests. Colleagues who'd once praised her now whispered doubts, one pulling me aside to express relief at the exposure, implying they'd suspected favoritism, but lacked proof. The fallout accelerated. By afternoon, the editor reassigned her projects, crediting originals where due, including mine, which landed me the lead on the election follow-up. Satisfaction bloomed, not vengeful glee, but a quiet validation that truth had leveled the field without my direct hand. As the day wore on, Emma's attempts to rally support backfired. Texts to the group chat implying a witch hunt drew sparse replies, the evidence's weight turning allies wary. Legal advised her departure on administrative leave, hinting at potential ethics violations that could bar future industry roles, and she left quietly, avoiding eye contact with the team. The probe expanded agency-wide, prompting voluntary disclosures from others wary of association, which indirectly bolstered my position. Invitations to contribute on high-profile pieces flowed, recognizing the restored trust. Emotional release came in waves. The initial disorientation from betrayal now fully transmuted into empowered detachment. Anger resolved through this subtle reckoning that demanded accountability without spectacle. By evening, the editor called a team debrief, acknowledging the incident's impact on morale and crediting the anonymous tip for safeguarding standards, without probing origins. He implied future safeguards like dual reviews on submissions, a direct response to the exposed flaws. Colleagues nodded in agreement, the atmosphere shifting from unease to cautious unity, several approaching me afterward to affirm the justice served. I contributed minimally, focusing on forward momentum, but inside catharsis settled. The plan's execution not only dismantled her facade but rebuilt my agency, turning victimhood into quiet authority. No gloating followed, instead a profound respect for the process, where consequences arose naturally from her actions, leaving the team, and me, stronger. The next morning brought confirmations. HR notified of her formal termination, the audit revealing over $5,000 in misrepresented expenses tied to her PR ties, prompting repayment demands. Industry whispers circulated via newsletters, tarnishing her resume without naming sources, ensuring the repercussions lingered. I fielded a call from the editor, offering expanded responsibilities based on my proven track record. The indirect nod to the dossier's revelations sealing my ascent. Pain from the friendships and dulled to acceptance, replaced by fulfillment in the retribution's elegance. Facts as the ultimate mirror, reflecting her choices back unaltered. A month after the fallout, I sat in a quiet corner of a Chicago lakeside park, the steady lap of Lake Michigan waves against the shore providing a rhythmic backdrop to my thoughts. The agency's internal audit had wrapped up, confirming Emma's termination and leading to policy changes like mandatory credit logs for submissions, which indirectly validated the dossier's impact without ever tracing it back to me. Colleagues had moved on, some reaching out with casual invitations to collaborate on new pieces, their tones free of the previous awkwardness, but I selected partnerships carefully now, prioritizing those who'd shown quiet support during the probe. The raw pain of betrayal had dulled to a manageable echo, replaced by a serene acceptance. No lingering grudge, just a clear-eyed understanding that her actions stemmed from her own insecurities, not my worth. Work had stabilized into something stronger. The editor assigned me lead on the election series, crediting my original research in the byline, which opened doors to freelance opportunities with national outlets. During a recent team meeting, he referenced the incident as a turning point for integrity, implying anonymous vigilance had protected the agency's reputation, and several reporters nodded in agreement, fostering a subtle shift toward more transparent workflows. I contributed ideas sparingly, focusing on execution rather than seeking applause, the once constant anger now channeled into sharper reporting that earned quiet respect. Internally, the transformation felt complete. From the disoriented woman reeling in shock, I'd emerged with unshakable boundaries, trusting my instincts over blind loyalty. Emma's absence lingered in small ways, her desk reassigned to a new hire, her name scrubbed from recent archives. But no contact came, no apologies or explanations, which suited the peace I'd cultivated. Whispers in industry circles suggested she'd relocated to a smaller firm out of state, her resume gaps drawing scrutiny, the natural consequences of her deceptions unfolding without my involvement. A former mutual contact mentioned in passing how she'd tried networking events but faced skepticism, implying the evidence's ripples had reached beyond the agency. Satisfaction came not from her struggles, but from the freedom of release. I'd stopped analyzing her motives, recognizing that holding on to them only prolonged my own unrest. Evenings now involved journaling sessions, where I documented lessons from the ordeal, spotting red flags in collaborations early, documenting contributions proactively, and nurturing a network of reliable allies like Mike, who'd become a steady collaborator. One afternoon, he suggested we pitch a joint story on media ethics, framing it as a way to contribute positively post-incident. And I agreed, the partnership feeling equitable for the first time in years. The exercise reinforced my growth. Bewilderment and fury had forged resilience, turning vulnerability into vigilant strength without hardening me against genuine connections. As weeks turned to routine, I volunteered for a mentorship program at a local journalism school, sharing anonymized experiences on navigating workplace challenges, emphasizing evidence over emotion in conflicts. Students listened intently during the session, one asking indirectly about handling credit disputes, and my response, gather facts, act decisively but discreetly, drew appreciative nods. The role brought purpose, transforming personal pain into guidance for others, and feedback forms later praised the practicality, hinting at my evolving authority in the field. No longer defined by the betrayal, I stepped forward with quiet confidence, each interaction a step away from victimhood. The moral crystallized in quiet moments. She hadn't destroyed me. Her choices had unraveled her own path, while I'd chosen reconstruction. Industry award season approached, and my election piece earned a nomination, announced via email with congratulations from the team, but I celebrated privately, toasting with coffee overlooking the city skyline. The catharsis washed over me fully. No need for external validation, just the inner calm of knowing I'd reclaimed control through intellect, not confrontation. Betrayal had tested limits, but emerging intact proved my core intact, free to pursue stories that mattered on my terms. By month's end, a new project landed. A deep dive into local reforms spurred by the very corruption I'd first uncovered, positioning me at the forefront without the shadows of theft. Colleagues referenced the agency's fresh start in casual talks, implying the probe's legacy had weeded out toxicity, and I nodded, content in the understatement. Emotional residue faded entirely, leaving hope as the dominant force. I'd withstood the storm, emerging not just surviving, but thriving, with a renewed faith in my ability to navigate future challenges. The journey ended not in triumph over her, but in peace with myself, stronger, wiser, unbound.